Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Torah is for Everyone. Tonight we're going to look at Vayera, and there's so many things in Vayera. Like when I'm going to do the message for Shabbat, and it was almost overwhelming. There's so many things that I see. But let's read it because that's what we're here to do. We're here to read the portion because no matter how many opinions we have about the Torah, it's always best to go and see what it says for itself. And don't be afraid to interrupt or to bring in your opinions while I'm reading. And if you'd like to read it at some point, please let me know. So the Torah portion is called Vayera. Vayera, he appeared. And the one who's appearing here, it says Yud He Vav He, appeared to him who was Abraham by the trees, the terebinths of Mamre. He was sitting at the entrance of the tent as the day grew hot. Now, I know how hot it is in the Middle East, but I'll tell you something. When I was in Texas, that was hot. But it was hot. I don't know how they can stand it. Anyway, looking up, he saw three, here it says figures, but in the Hebrew, it says Shlosha Anashim, three men. Some say that they were messengers, some say that they're angels, but three men were standing near him. And when he saw this, he ran from the entrance of the tent to greet them, bowing to the ground. And he said, "My lords," it's a term of honor. "If it please you, do not go past your servant. Let a little water be brought, bathe your feet, and recline under the tree." That culture there is very different than our culture up here in Canada. Here, if we see people knocking on our door, we go, "Shh, don't let anybody know anyone's home." But there, it's like the guests, the people who come to visit are more important than your own families. And we're going to see that later with Lot, that those messengers, these guys who went to his house were more important than his own daughters. And the water was to be brought to bathe their feet because they walk in the desert. It was a very practical thing. Sometimes it's made into like a very spiritual thing. They did that with Yeshua when Miriam, I think it was Miriam, Mary Magdalene, they call her. She took her hair and she washed his feet. She anointed his feet. But and I think also he bathed the feet of his disciples, of his Talmidim. But it was an act of humility. It was an act of honor. It's like you're saying, welcome to my home. And rest, recline under the tree, and let me get you some bread and refresh yourselves, and then you can go on your way, seeing that you've come your servant's way. They replied, "Do as you said." So Abraham hastened into the tent to Sarah, and she said, "Quick, 3 seahs of flour, knead and make bread." Now, I don't know how fast you can make bread, but I think it was more those pitas, so it probably didn't take too long in the sun. But you see that they were so hospitable. Then Abraham ran to the herd. He took a calf, a tender and choice calf, one of the best, and he gave it to a servant boy who hastened to prepare it. Now look what he did. They had the calf, and he said he took curds, which was cheese, and milk, and the calf that had been prepared, and set these before them. And he waited on them under the tree as they ate. So you see in the Torah, it's okay to eat meat and milk. There was nowhere in the Torah that was changed. They said to him, "Where is your wife Sarah?" And he replied, "There in the tent." And here comes the famous promise. Then one day, one said, "I will return to you next year, and your wife Sarah shall have a son." I think it says at this season, "and your wife Sarah will have a son." Now she was already 90, I think she was 90 years old or 89. At this point, she was 89. So Sarah was listening at the tent, the entrance of the tent, which was behind them. When I told the story at Maimonides, I told the story how Sarah had a baby when she was 90, and everybody just laughed. And that's exactly what Sarah did. But Abraham and Sarah were old, well advanced in years. She had stopped menstruating. And Sarah laughed to herself, saying, "Now that I've lost the ability, am I to have enjoyment with my husband so old?" She knew at this point it was impossible without a miraculous intervention of the Creator for her to have a child. And in the scriptures, we're going to see many of these. As a matter of fact, a little later on in this portion, we're going to see that in the household of Abimelech, that God stopped the women from having children. And later we'll meet many women who could not have children. And when they went to pray, God opened their womb. Then the Lord said to Abraham, "Why did Sarah laugh?" Saying, shall I in truth bear a child at my age? Is anything too wondrous for Yud He Vav He? Nothing is impossible with God. And I think we forget that. We think God is up there. He has very little to do with us. We're on our own. And when we go through trying times, and I know because the last couple of weeks have been very trying times in my life, to the point that it was making me sick. And I was forgetting to just trust God. Here, I will return to you at the same season next year, and Sarah shall have a son. But here Sarah lied, saying, "I did not laugh," because she was afraid. But the reply came, "But you did laugh." He wasn't going to let her get away with that. The messengers sent out from there and looked down towards Sodom. Abraham was walking with them to see them off. Now, this has created a lot of mystery. It says, Yud He Vav He had said, "Shall I hide from Abraham what I am about to do?" It's not that these men said that, but it's very possible that God spoke to the messengers saying, "Shall I hide from Abraham what I'm about to do?" What Christianity has done is made one of those three angels into Yud He Vav He, and that's not what the scriptures say. Since Abraham is to become a great and populous nation, and all the nations of the earth are to bless themselves by him. For I have singled him out, that he may instruct his children and his descendants to keep the way of Yud He Vav He by doing what is just and what is right, in order that Yud He Vav He may bring about for Abraham what has been promised him. Then the Creator said, "The outrage of Sodom and Gomorrah is so great. Their sin is so grave." Now remember, Abraham was 58 years old when Noah passed away. He was 58. So he well knew about the flood. He well understood what it meant to have the whole earth completely annihilated. And here he's listening about that the sin of Sodom and Gomorrah was so great. He understood that the sin of the world was so great. And here we are again in the same cycle, Sodom and Gomorrah. Their sin is so grave. I will go down to see whether they have acted altogether according to the outcry that has reached me. If not, I will take note. So here these men were going to go and see if it was actually true. What was really going on in Sodom and Gomorrah? Was this as great as the outcry that reached the ears of the Creator? The messengers went on from there to Sodom, while Abraham remained standing before God. Now, we don't know if the men were there, because it says they went on, but he's standing before God. We are all standing before God. And Abraham came forward and said, Here's the negotiation, because remember, he understood what it meant for the earth to be destroyed. And it's like I was thinking of how all my life I understood the idea of the Holocaust. I didn't live through it, but I heard so many stories about it. And now it's almost like we're living little holocausts here again. October 7th was a Holocaust. We just had in Amsterdam, where they tried to kill thousands. There were thousands of Jews who had gone, Israelis who had gone to watch the soccer game, and there was a pogrom there. It was horrible. But Abraham came and said to God, will you sweep away the innocent along with the guilty? What if there are 50 innocent within the city? Will you then wipe out the place and not forgive it for the sake of innocent 50 who are in it? Far be it from you to do such a thing, to bring death upon the innocent as well as the guilty, so that the innocent and the guilty fare alike. Far be it from you. Shall not the judge of all the earth deal justly? And God answered, the creator of the universe answered him, if I find within the city of Sodom 50 innocent men, I will forgive the whole place for their sake. Abraham spoke up, saying, forgive me, Lord, I want to speak to you, but I'm but dust and ashes. He knew how humble he was going before God to ask about this. What if the 50 should lack only 5? In other words, if there's 45, will you destroy the whole city for want of 5? I will not destroy if I find 45 there. But Abraham spoke up again, and he said, what if 40 can be found? I will not do it for the sake of 40. Look at how God is. We doubt, we worry, we complain, but God is so long-suffering and merciful to us. He's so patient with us. And Abraham said, don't be angry with me if I continue. What if 30 should be found there? And God simply answered, I will not do it if I find 30 there. And he continues. Oh, what a chutzpah. I venture again to speak to my God. What if 20 shall be found there? I will not destroy for the sake of the 20. And he said, let not my Lord be angry if I speak but this last time. What if 10 should be found there? I will not destroy for the sake of 10. Having finished speaking to Abraham, God departed, and Abraham returned to his place. It makes me think of how God spoke to Moses face to face. Well, here he spoke to Abraham. All through, we see through the scriptures, we see these patterns that God has set up where he chooses people to whom he speaks, which opens the door for really him to speak to us. The 2 messengers arrived in Sodom in the evening. And here it's interesting because it says 2 messengers. That's why they said, what happened to the third? Because there were 3 men. That's why I think people think that one of them was God. I don't know. What do you think about this? Anybody?
I don't know. Could they have been angels or like some spiritual beings?
They could have been. They certainly could have been. Because God certainly gave them the power to do miracles. They could have been angels. We don't know. It doesn't say. But they arrived in Sodom in the evening, as Lot was sitting in the gate of Sodom. When Lot saw them, he rose to greet them, and bowing low with his face to the ground, he said, please, my lords, come to your servant's house to spend the night. Bathe your feet. Then you may be on your way early. He learned from Abraham. He knew, he came from a culture where there was righteous behavior. He was at the gates. It was usually at the gates where the wise men stood stayed. The judges would stay at the gates. When people needed advice, they would go to the gate, and he was there. So he was righteous among the rest, even though he may not have been as righteous as Abraham, for sure not. But they said, no, we will spend the night in the square. But he urged them strongly. So they turned his way and entered his house. He prepared a feast for them and baked unleavened bread, and they ate. They had not yet laid down when the town council and the militia, I don't know who these were, of Sodom, insignificant and influential alike, the whole assembly without exception, gathered around the house. They were all outside. And they shouted to Lot and said to him, where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out, that we may be intimate with them. Imagine, these are the town council. These are the police, the who knows if it's the army, the militia of Sodom. So Lot went out to them. He went to the entrance and he shut the door behind them, saying I beg you, my friends, do not do such a thing. And look what he says. Look, I have 2 daughters who have not known a man. Let me bring them out to you. They were engaged. We'll see later. They had their fiancés a little later on. So it's obvious that Lot did instill in them some sense of right and wrong because they were still virgins. I have 2 daughters who have not yet known a man. Let me bring them out to you, and you may do to them as you please.
That's frightening.
I would hope, you're absolutely right, Miriam, and I would hope that he knew the character of those people outside, that he knew that they would refuse because they wanted the men. Do not do anything to the others, since they have come under the shelter of my roof. But look how the society in which you live can affect you, where you lose your own morality. We have to be so careful and hold on so tight to the principles of the Torah so that we don't fall the way they seem to have done. But they said, stand back. The fellow came here as a stranger, and already he acts like the ruler. These are the city people who are telling Lot, get out of the way. Who does this guy think he is? Lot, who came here as a foreigner, and now he thinks he can rule over us. Now we will deal worse with you than with them. And they pressed hard against the house, the door, the gate, against Lot. And they moved forward to break down the door. How frightening that must have been. But the messengers, the Anashim, stretched out their hands and pulled Lot into the house with them, and they shut the door. The people who were at the entrance of the house, it reminds me of how God shut the door from the ark when the people who he was saving were in the ark. So many pictures of this, these cycles, these patterns. The people who were outside at the entrance of the house, low and high alike, they struck them with blinding light so that they were helpless to find the entrance. See, God gave them this power. Then the angels or the agents, the messengers said to Lot, who else do you have here? Son-in-laws, your sons and daughters, anyone else that you have in the city? Bring them out of the place, because we're about to destroy it. Because the outcry against them before God, the Creator, has become so great that the Creator has sent us to destroy it. So Lot went out, and he spoke to his son-in-laws who had married his daughters. But it's funny because it said they had not known men, so they were probably engaged.
Maybe it was other daughters, or did he only have 3 daughters?
I don't know. It's a good question. Maybe. Doesn't say. But I would think it was the same daughters he spoke to from before, about before. Take my daughters. Maybe these are others. It's true. I didn't think of that, Miriam.
No, I don't know. I'm just wondering.
No, we don't know. It's not clear. He spoke to his sons-in-law who were there, who had married his daughters. But we do know that when daughters were engaged, it was as if they were married. And
When it says, that the messengers, they have come to destroy us before become, what is it? The outcry? It says God has become, the outcry before God has become so great that Adonai has sent us to destroy it.
right.
So I guess, I mean, it sounds like they're spiritual beings, unless they're messengers. That means God is going to destroy it. They're not going to destroy it.
Exactly. God gives human beings and even the angels the ability to do these things. We don't understand. How can we explain? How can we explain how the Haftorah portion is beautiful about Elisha? There was a Shunammite woman who was told to, when Elisha went to visit, to build a room upstairs in her house. And so that every time this Elisha came to the house, he would have a place to stay. And he asked the woman, "What can we do for you?" And she said, "Nothing, I have everything." But Gehazi, the servant of Elisha, said, they're old. She has no son. And just like, God opens the womb of Sarah, he opened the womb of this Shunammite woman, and she gave him a son. The God gave him a son, but then the son died, and Elisha went back, and it's a whole long story, but basically Elisha healed the boy, brought him back to life. So, but God is the one who does that, and he uses people to do these things. I would love to be used to do some of these things, but it's not my calling. Okay, up, get out of this place, for Adonai, for God, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, is about to destroy. But it seemed to his sons-in-law that he was just joking. And as the dawn broke, the messengers, the angels, urged Lot on, saying, "Get up, take your wife and your two remaining daughters." So maybe maybe what happened here, that these two virgin daughters were not married. Maybe, yeah, you're right. These here, he had other daughters who had married sons-in-law and they didn't go. But his two remaining daughters who were not married, that's very good. I didn't even notice that. I love it. Take your wife and your two remaining daughters, lest you be swept away because of the iniquity of the city. The rest wouldn't go. And still, Lot held back. He still delayed. He didn't want to leave. So the messengers seized his hand and the hand of his wife and his two daughters because of God's mercy on him, and brought him out and let them out of the city. And when they had brought them out, one said, "Flee for your life. Do not look behind you." This is one of the angels saying, "Run. Don't look behind." In other words, don't miss your past life. There's a new life ahead of you. You're going to go on a different path. Don't stop anywhere in the plain. Flee to the hills, or else you'll be swept away with what was going to happen to Sodom. But Lot said to them, "Oh no, my lord, you have been so gracious to your servant, and have already shown me so much kindness in order to save my life, but I cannot flee to the hills, lest the disaster overtake me and I die. Look, that town there is near enough to flee to. It's such a small place. Let me flee there. It's such a little place. Let my life be saved." I guess at this point he was so spoiled he didn't want to go to a cave. He wanted to go to a town. And he replied, "Very well, I grant you this favor too. I will not annihilate the town of which you have spoken. Hurry, flee there, for I cannot do anything until you arrive there." Then the town came to be called Zoar. Let's see what it says about Zoar. Oh, just a little place. Okay. As the sun rose up upon the earth, Lot entered Zoar. Adonai rained upon Sodom and Gomorrah sulfur, fire of sulfur, and those pieces of that can be found there to this very day. From the Creator out of heaven. I guess to us today it would look like comets hitting the world, annihilating cities and the entire plain, and all the inhabitants of the city and the vegetation of the ground. But Lot's wife looked back, and she was turned into a pillar of salt. That pillar of salt can be seen there to this very day as well. Next morning, Abraham hurried to the place where he had stood before God. And looking down toward Sodom and Gomorrah and all the land of the plain, he saw the smoke of the land rising like the smoke of a kiln. Wow. I mean, I look on the on social media, on television, on the news, and I see smoke rising from what's happening in the war in Lebanon and in Israel. It's just frightening. Thus it was that when God destroyed the cities of the plain and annihilated the cities where Lot dwelt, God was mindful of Abraham and removed Lot from the midst of the upheaval. This is where we get in the merits of our fathers. Because of the merit of Abraham, he removed Lot out of Sodom.
I
Lot,
thought Lot had already, he said, run ahead, so he didn't make it, or I know his,
yeah, he did.
yeah, but it said, God was mine and removed Lot from the midst of the upheaval, so he needed to help to get, he hadn't made it, so to speak, and his wife was turned, killed or whatever.
No, but he already had removed Lot from the midst of Sodom and Gomorrah.
Oh, so they're just talking about it when in the past already.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, okay.
Lot went up from Zoar and settled in the hill country with his 2 daughters, for he was afraid to dwell in Zoar. He just saw that and he thought, "Oof, what if that happens to this city?" And he and his 2 daughters lived in a cave. They must have thought that the whole world was destroyed.
Right.
The older one said to the younger, "Our father is old, and there's not a man on earth to consort with us in the ways of all the world. Let us make our father drink wine, and let us lie with him, that we may maintain life through our father." So obviously, there's enough of that culture to understand that it had to be through them, through the father, that his line would be continued. In some ways, they would be considered righteous. When I read about "let us make our father drink wine," it reminded me of how Noah got drunk and Ham. I don't know what he did with them, but here the girls were going to lie with him. And just little pictures that came to my mind as I was reading this. That night they made their father drink wine, and the older one went in and lay with her father. He did not know when she lay down or when she rose. The next day the older one said to the younger, "Look, I lay with father last night. Let us make him drink wine tonight, and you go lie down with him, that we may maintain life through our father." So that night also they made the father drink wine, and the younger went and lay with him, and he did not know when she lay down or when she arose. Thus the 2 daughters of Lot became pregnant by their father. These 2 sons, these 2 children who would be born, would become enemies of Israel. The older one had a son named Moab, the Moabites. He's the father of the Moabites of today. And the younger one also bore a son. She called him Ben-Ami. He is the father of the Ammonites today. Both who, through what good can come from this, really, when you think about it, this kind of incest. But like Sarah, who saw no other way to have.
However, there's an exception, Peggy,
Okay.
with Ruth.
Yes. Isn't that the marvelous story of the Bible? That God can make a way for anyone. You're absolutely right. But it shows us also when women, or when anybody really goes ahead of God. Look what Sarah did. She ran ahead of God because she couldn't see how it was possible for her and Abraham to have a child, so that his name could continue the name of Abraham. And here it was the same thing. When we run ahead of God, there's always going to be trouble in the future. Abraham journeyed from there to the region of the Negev and settled in Kadesh and Shur. While he was sojourning in Gerar, Abraham said to Sarah, his wife, said of Sarah, "She is my sister." He had done the same thing with Pharaoh. Now in Gerar, he said the same thing to King Abimelech. And so Abimelech had Sarah brought to him. Same story. These stories repeat patterns in the scriptures. But God came to Abimelech in a dream by night and said to him, "You're going to die because of the woman you have taken, for she is a married woman." Look how God can speak to anyone. He spoke to Abimelech. Abimelech had not approached her. He said, "Oh Lord, will you slay people, even though innocent?" He said to himself, he himself said to me, "She is my sister." And she also said, "He is my brother." When I did that, my heart was blameless and my hands were clean. God said to him in a dream, "I knew that you did this with a blameless heart. You had a clear heart," because they told him that. "So I kept you from sinning against me. That was why I didn't let you touch her. Therefore, restore the man's wife, since he is a prophet. He will intercede for you to save your life. If you fail to restore her, know that you will die, and all that are yours." So early in the morning, Abimelech called his servants and told them what had happened, and they were very frightened. Abimelech summoned Abraham and said to him, "What have you done to us? What did I do wrong to you that you should bring such a great guilt upon my head and my kingdom? You've done to me things you shouldn't have done." "What then," Abimelech demanded of Abraham, "was your purpose in doing such a thing?" Abraham knew the customs of the day. "I thought, surely there's no fear of God in this place, and they will kill me because of my wife. And besides, in truth, she's my sister, my father's daughter. Though not my mother's, she became my wife." So there was a half-truth. A half-truth can be as dangerous as a lie. "So when God made me wander from my father's house, I said to her, 'Do this kindness to me. Wherever we go, tell them you're my brother.' But look what happens. Abimelech took sheep and oxen and male and female slaves and gave them to Abraham. And he restored his wife Sarah to him. And Abimelech said, 'Here, my land is before you. Settle wherever you want.' And to Sarah he said, 'I'm giving your brother 1,000 pieces of silver. This shall serve in payment, vindication before all who are with you, and you are cleared before everyone.'" Because they all knew, everyone there knew that Sarah was, so he needed to vindicate himself. He needed to make things right. And then look what happens here. Abraham then prayed to God, and God healed Abimelech and his wife and his slave girls so that they bore children. In other words, he had shut up their wombs during that time. For the Lord had closed fast every womb of the household of Abimelech because of Sarah, the wife of Abraham. Isn't that
Here's
interesting?
an example where he blessed not only the Israelites, but other peoples.
Exactly. And we don't even understand why or how, because here they lied. But they lied to save their life. It wasn't done in a malicious
Yeah,
way
it was to save life. Yeah.
to save life because they knew the customs of the day.
Yeah.
And here, when somebody is having trouble getting pregnant in this modern time, maybe God is doing it for a reason. Maybe. Yud He Vav He, the Creator, took note of Sarah as promised. He remembered Sarah and did for Sarah, what had been announced, what he had promised. Sarah conceived and bore a son to Abraham in his old age at the set time of which God had spoken. Now, when you read this, Sarah conceived, the first thing that comes to mind is they had sex, they made love, even in their old age, and God opened her womb, did a miracle. So, and that was the same with every woman in Israel from the beginning with Sarah. So when they tell us in Christianity that Miriam did not sleep with Joseph at that time, that the Holy Spirit came upon her, they are really speaking out of the left side of their mouth because it doesn't follow the patterns and the formulas set down by Scripture. The miracle that could have happened at that time was she was so young. I mean, they were engaged at the ages of 12 and 13. Most probably she didn't have her period yet because she was so young. And I hope I don't get stoned for that. Baruch, are you saying something? You want to put yourself on mute if you're going to speak to someone else? Thank you. So Abraham gave his newborn son, whom Sarah had borne him, the name of Yitzchak. Yitzchak means laughter. And when his son Yitzchak was 8 days old, Abraham circumcised him as God had commanded him. Remember, with Ishmael, he wasn't circumcised. Here, creating a new people, he was circumcised. Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him.
Wasn't Ishmael circumcised at 13?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, so you're talking about the 8 days, right?
Yeah, Ishmael is still here with them at this point.
Oh, that's right, of course. My
Yeah.
God, I'm going jumping around. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So Abraham has circumcised Isaac and Ishmael and himself and all the servants in his house. Everybody, they were all circumcised at different ages. Ouch. Now Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him. Sarah said, God has brought me laughter. Everyone who hears will laugh with me. And that is for sure. Right up to this day, thousands of years later, we still laugh when we hear this story. If someone told me I was going to get pregnant, I would laugh. And she added, who would have said to Abraham that Sarah would nurse children? Yet I have borne a son in his old age. The child grew up and was weaned. And Abraham held a great fast on the day that a great feast on the day that Isaac was weaned. Sarah saw the son whom Hagar the Egyptian had borne to Abraham playing. We don't know what this word playing, mitzachek, it's almost like mockery, mocking him. Some people say he was playing with him in an indecent way. I don't know. But all we know is Hagar was doing something that really bothered Sarah. And Sarah said to Abraham, get rid of the slave woman and her son, For the son of that slave shall not share the inheritance with my son. The matter greatly distressed Abraham, for it concerned a son of his. It was still his son. It wasn't Sarah's, but it was his. And it was considered her son for a while, but Hagar was a very strong character. And when she got pregnant, she really mocked Sarah. That was the first time Sarah kicked them out. So there was no good blood between the two of them. And let me tell you, we have that until today. But God said to Abraham, do not be distressed over the boy or your slave. Whatever Sarah tells you, do as she says, because it's going to be through Isaac, and his offspring shall be continued for you. As for the son of the slave woman, I will make a nation of him too. Ishmael, well, we were already told he would be the leader of 12 tribes, for he is your seed. And every morning Abraham took some bread, Abraham took some bread and a skin of water and gave them to Hagar. He placed them over her shoulder together with the child and sent her away. And she wandered about in the wilderness of Beersheba. So I would wonder, if Abraham was so wealthy, why did he send his firstborn son, not his unique son, but his firstborn, away with just some bread and water? Why didn't he give them a little more to sustain them longer? He didn't know what was going to happen. He didn't give them money to start again. I mean, this would cause them to be hated for a long time. I don't get this. Anybody have an idea?
I'm just speculating, thinking out loud, unless he, knew that he also would be the father of many nations, and he knew that they were with God in the sense that God would provide, but
Yes, he did. He already knew that. You're right.
so maybe he knew it
And
wasn't.
not only that, he also knew Beersheba was a well. There was a well there at Beersheba.
Okay, right.
Yeah. Yes, thanks, Miriam. When the water was gone from the skin, she left the child under one of the bushes and went and sat down at a distance, a bow shot away, for she thought, let me not look on as the child dies. Now, I don't know if at this point she understood that her son was also going to be the leader of 12 tribes. I don't know if Abraham said anything to her. And sitting thus afar, she burst into tears. God heard the cry of the boy, and a messenger of God called to Hagar from heaven and said to her, what troubles you, Hagar? Don't be afraid, for God has heard the cry of the boy where he is. Come, lift up the boy, hold him by the hand, for I will make a great nation of him. God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. It's interesting. Here, it's like the well must have been there. It didn't say God created a well of water. But when you're so depressed and you're so down, you cannot see what's right in front of your face. And God had to show her that there was a well of water right there. She went and filled the skin with water and let the boy drink. God was with the boy, and he grew up. He dwelt in the wilderness and became skilled with a bow, just like Esau. Same idea.
When you think of how much time, like just in terms of is spent on talking about Ishmael, talking about him, the boy, look at, these are not talking about Israelites in the sense of descendants of Shem or whatever. And when you think about it, it's pretty amazing. Like he's going to become a prince of 12 tribes. Now, even though now, they're our enemies now, right now. But I don't remember where it is in the Torah, where in the half Torah somewhere, where it talks about the chosen, like aside from Israel, the other chosen would be, I think, was Egypt and Syria. Like God is going to do a lot of restoration in the future.
Exactly.
We're far from it, but we don't know what lays ahead in terms of our relationship with the descendants of
Exactly, because these are our brothers.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I wish I could find it. I keep forgetting, and then I'm gonna look. But
Just
so
Google it, you'll
Charles
find
E.
it.
Huh?
Google it, you'll find it.
Yeah, yeah.
So Ishmael lived in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother got a wife for him from the land of Egypt, because that's where she was from. At that time, Abimelech, this is another Abimelech, it's not the king, and Phicol, chief of his troops, said to Abraham, God is with you in everything that you do. Look at this. These are people who are not part of Abraham, outsiders. And Abimelech and Phicol, chief of his troops, of Abimelech, God is with you in everything you do. Therefore, swear to me here by God.
I'd like to make a comment to Miriam, Peggy.
Yes,
I think the Jews lived in with the with our stepbrothers, and they lived for many years together. Where was it? In Babylon, I think, or they all lived together.
I continue. I don't know what you're talking about.
No, the Jews and the Arabs lived together before, like they lived together in one of the lands. I think it was Babylon or something. They
Many lands, many lands.
many lands. So,
Yeah.
I'm not sure if the Arabs are a natural enemies of the Jews. What has come about, I believe, like certain leaders and politics have separated the average person, because so let us say we would be friendly, Jews would be friendly with everyone, and like we lived in every country, we would be friendly with everyone, and but not necessarily by our choosing, but politics and certain small percentage of people have pulled us apart.
I completely agree with you. And I've heard many Israelis speaking about how they've gotten along with the Arabs for centuries. And Jews and Arabs would trade together, and they would negotiate. The Arabs would use the Jews to negotiate when they were doing business with the Christians. You're right. You're right. They're not our natural enemies. They're
Right. Even now, though we don't know the exact terms, there are Jews and living in what we call our greatest political one, or in Iran, there are Jews living there, and we don't hear that they're being whatever. So it's so anyhow. So Miriam, things are not always what they seem, and the natural human being uh, loves most everybody. We like all the people. It's just politics. I think that and but politics is very real and just makes enemies of the average people, which is I don't believe that I would call that natural.
Well, but it is according to the Torah, Jerry. In that way, my perspective is it is something within us. Look, did we read it how he would be called a wild donkey?
Yes, it is written somewhere that
It's written here in this.
Ishmael shall live by the sword, but doesn't necessarily mean against but us or something.
No,
But
it
yes,
says they will. I think we're going to read it very soon. But look at the first two men who lived on earth, the first two, I mean, the two children of Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel. Cain killed his brother Abel over jealousy. So it is a natural trait within humans to do that. But we must learn to dominate that part, that spirit within us,
yeah,
that part of our nature.
Yes, unfortunately, I'm saying it 3 times. Unfortunately, that poo poo poo, it should not be part of our heritage. However, some people will say we are given 2 souls, an animal soul, which just wants to look after itself, and the godly soul. And for us to have free choice and not be like angels, so we have to have this struggle within us, and and that's possibly where things come from.
Yes, very possible. But I don't know if we have 2 souls, but definitely
Well,
the soul definitely has
well,
it,
we can
some things can't be explained in with
well,
words.
we can call. There are some people will say that. Uh, I didn't want to give reference to other materials right now. Doesn't matter. Like I believe in the Tanya, they talk about an animal soul and a godly soul, or shall we say, an evil nature and a good nature.
Yes,
So, and this
Yetzer
is a
Hara.
constant battle,
Yes,
and if we did not have that soul, then we would be like angels who just have, so we wouldn't have many choices.
exactly, exactly.
And look what came out of this thing. The only thing is, I like the idea that we should love all peoples and not really have natural enemies, but which unfortunately politics dictates that.
Well, it's not only politics, religion as well. I mean, you're talking about a utopia, and it would be wonderful if we did, and one day we will, when God gives us new bodies, when our souls are in the final days. I don't know what that looks like. There are many religions who have their interpretation of what that's going to look like. We'll see, but one day we'll be returned to the Garden of Eden. The whole planet hopefully will be like the Garden of Eden, but I don't know what that's going to look like. All I know is right now I got to deal with my own nature, and it's not easy. Honestly, I thank God for the soul that He put in me, and that I walk with Him, because otherwise I don't know what I would do with myself. Anyway, so he's continuing on here. Uh, they're negotiating about a well, and they make a pact. Um, and they call this place Beersheba, where this pact was made between Abraham's and Abimelech and Phicol. And they departed and returned to the land of the Philistines. Abraham planted a tamarisk at Beersheba and invoked there, called upon the name of the everlasting God. Yud He Vav He. He knew how to pronounce it, and one day we will know how to pronounce it.
How is this, is this like, it sounds like it's not a new thing. He already knew the name of Yud He. He already knew God. He had
Yeah,
many.
but he just called on his name, called on him.
Okay, I love it. The
Yeah.
everlasting God.
Yeah,
That word is such an evocative word,
yeah.
everlasting.
El Olam, Yud He Vav He, El Olam, the God of eternity. Yeah, it's beautiful. And here Abram resided in the land of the Philistines for a long time. And this was a test that he
That's a
had to put
Gaza today, right?
for the Philistines.
Yeah, is
I
that
don't,
Gaza?
I don't know.
I think it is. Anyway, I'm not sure. I seem to remember. Maybe I thought so.
Well, no, because are you saying the Philistines and the Palestinians are the same? Because they're
No,
not.
no, I'm not saying the peoples are the same, but the physical land. I thought that's where Gaza is now. It's
It's
not there?
possible. I don't know. We'd have to look it up.
Okay.
Does anybody know that? If the land of the Philistines is where Gaza is today? Because usually it says, because it's a biblical place, it would say Gaza or Aza. So I don't know, but maybe. There's so much more that I have to learn. That's why I love reading, but we have to look that up. Maybe while I'm reading, you can look it up, Miriam. Sometimes afterward, God put Abraham to the test, saying to him, Abraham, and he answered, Hineni, here I am.
And Peggy,
Yes,
that Hineni
yeah,
is a very very particular phrase. It's used in many instances when Lord calls on the people, and that is the answer. Hineni. And in fact, some of our performers here use that that name,
Yes.
that word.
I remember the first time I read this, Hineni, it was exactly how I felt. I had lost everything, turned back to God, and the first time I heard it, I went, Hineni, here I am, God, use me. It's like you're open that God would use you in any possible scenario. But then when you say Hineni, the testing comes, because our nature, God wants to show us. If we say, here I am, God, use me, it's God has given us a purpose. And if we are to step in willingly, step into the purpose that he has for us, then he's going to test us to see how much we trust him. And that is the difficult part. And here he says, take your son. Here it says your favorite son, but it's yechid, yechida, yechidcha. It's your unique son, because he's not he is a favored one, but it's deeper than that. You're only your unique son, Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah and offer him there as a burnt offering on the heights that I will point out to you. So early in the next morning, Abraham saddled his donkey and took 2 servants and his son Isaac. It usually takes 2 servants to be a witness. 2 people are to be a witness, and his son Isaac. He split the wood for the burnt offering, and he set out for the place of which God had told him. On the 3rd day, Abraham looked up and saw the place from far off. And Abraham said to his servants, you stay here with the donkey. The boy and I will go up there. We will worship, and we will return to you. That's prophetic. God, the same way, Miriam, that you said before, that God, Abraham knew that Ishmael would be the leader of 12 tribes. Here, he knew, without having heard the voice of God, that God was going to do something that would either bring his son back from the dead. He would do something. He trusted him. He took the wood for the burnt offering, put it on his son Isaac. And the son Isaac was about 37 years old here. So he wasn't a baby. And he had to agree to this. And he was carrying the wood, for himself. And Abraham took the firestone and the knife, and the 2 walked off together. Can't imagine how they were feeling and what they were thinking. Then Isaac said to his father Abraham, Father, and he answered, yes, my son. And he said, here is the stone and the wood, but where is the lamb? Where's the sheep for the burnt offering? And Abraham said, God will see to it. He will provide the sheep, the lamb for this burnt offering, my son. And the 2 of them continued on together. And they arrived at the place of which God had told him. And Abraham built an altar there. He laid out the wood. He bound his son Isaac. He laid him on the altar on top of the wood. And then Abraham picked up the knife to slay his son. Then, and only then, did a messenger of Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh call to him from heaven, Abraham, Abraham. And he answers again, Hineni, here I am. Do not raise your hand against the boy or do anything to him. For now I know that you revere, that you trust, fear God, since you have not withheld your son. Imagine, after having waited so long for this boy, you have not withheld your son from me. When we say that Hineni to God, and there's not many who are willing to do that, we have to do it no matter what the trials look like. And we may not hear an answer right away as to why we're going through a trial, because it was at the last second, the last moments, when the messenger of the Lord stayed the hand of Abraham. And then Abraham looked, and his eye fell on a ram. He saw a ram caught in the thicket by its horns. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered him up as a burnt offering in the place of his son. So he provided. Abraham named that place Adonai Yireh, God provides. Because whence the present saying, on the mount of the Lord there is vision. The messenger of God called to Abraham a second time from heaven and said, by myself I swear, the Lord declares, because you have done this and have not withheld your unique son, I will bestow my blessing upon you and make your descendants as numerous as the stars of heaven and the sands on the seashore. And your descendants shall seize the gates of their foes. All the nations of the earth shall bless themselves by your descendants, because you have obeyed my command. And Abraham then returned to his servants, and they departed for Beersheba. And Abraham stayed in Beersheba. And now we're going to see the door open for the next chapter. Sometimes later, Abraham was told, Milcah too has borne sons to your brother Nahor. Uz the firstborn, Buz his brother, Kemuel the father of Aram, Chesed, Chazog, Pildash, Yidlaf, and Betuel. Betuel was the father of Rivka.
And I'm not sure if it comes on here later. Sarah, having heard what had transpired, this caused her to not to live longer.
No, that was, oh yeah. No, this is in the next one, Chaye Sarah. That's in the very next chapter, the next parasha. These eight Milcah bore to Nahor, the concubine whose name was Reumah, also bore Tebagam. Okay, and daughter Makah. Here in the next one, Sarah's life came to 127. So right after this, she must have heard, the servants must have told her what Abraham did. And maybe he didn't tell her he was leaving with Abraham, with his Isaac, when they went to the Mount Moriah. But what these stories are incredible, and they're meant for us to help us through our daily lives, because we have situations that come up, people in our lives who are difficult to deal with. Life is not a bowl of cherries. It really, it's hard. Life is hard. But when God is with us, when he's on our side, he just always finds a way. He makes a way for us. At least that's what I have found in my life. I can't imagine living my life without him. And I wish all of us here would say, Hineni, Hineni, use me, Lord. And when we do, get ready. Get ready for the testing. Richard, do you have any comments? Maybe he's driving. Anyway.
I'm here.
Yes, Richard.
Every year that this comes along, I think of what a certain mathematician said about this. I'm a mathematician who specializes in game theory.
Okay.
And this mathematician did some kind of treatise, an essay on testing. All right. And in this case, it's a test where the tester hasn't told the testee that the testee is being tested.
Right.
Okay, so I always say that I test people without them knowing that they're being tested. I test my wife sometimes, and she doesn't know I'm testing her. I get tested without being known I'm being tested.
Right.
And so that's my comment.
Yeah, that's a good comment. And God tests us. He really does. The test is not for him. The test is for us. Because sometimes we doubt ourselves. Like you were going to say something, Miriam? I can't hear
It
you.
was just allergies on my nose it's
Oh, okay. Yeah, I know. I'm suffering from allergies too today. Anyway, and the testing serves as, for me, it serves as a way of humbling us. Because in order to really serve God, we need to acknowledge that most of what we do comes from him. You know, it's easy to say, oh, look how good I am. Look what I did. That's our natural tendency. But really, he wants us. We need to acknowledge just how much he does for us. And when we forget to do that, I think our life becomes harder. When I realize what he's done, like, you know, how he'll answer a prayer, or I'll see something come out of the blue that I never expected, an answer from something that I was struggling with, and go, wow, it fills us with great, great joy. So you look like you're standing on top of the world, Jerry. I'm on the top of the da 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 that of creation, and the only explanation I can find is the love that I found ever since you've been around. You're the that I'm on the top of the world. I like
How
that
do I
song.
get that background or any like a
You go and I'll show you after. I'll show you
okay.
later. So anyway, that was again a wonderful portion. It never ceases to amaze me how each time I see something new, and you don't have to dig deep to see something new in the Torah. You just have to read it. God reveals it to us.
It's not only what I find really amazing, it's not necessarily that you see words that you haven't seen before, but they somehow awaken some response in you that they didn't before.
Right,
That's what I find really amazing, when something becomes more alive inside of you.
right. It reminds me of what Rabbi used to say all the time, that we're living on, like, when you walk with God, it's as if you're living on an upward spiral. A spiral goes ahead. It's almost like you're going 2 steps ahead, and then you feel like you're falling backwards, but you're only 1 step back. Always 2. So each time you're experiencing what looks like the same trial as you went through before, or the same experience that you went through before. How come I have to face this again? But each time you face it with a little more wisdom, with a little more humility, with a little more trust, and you can just keep going ahead until the final spiral. The last day we take a breath. Amen, the amen. So thank you, everybody, for being here tonight, and I look forward to seeing you, God willing, next week.
Thank you.
You're welcome.